So West Reading has come out and decided that there is such a thing as children with gender incongruence. It does, you know, and decided that affirmation should be an option here, and that really what's required is more evidence to look at whether or not blocking the puberty of children can in fact be good for them. So he's allocated around £11 million for this study, and it's going to be done by King's College in London by two scientists, but I use the term hesitantly, Michael Absoud and Emily Simonov. And they are going to be looking at whether or not blocking the puberty of kids is in fact a good idea. Now, the target of this experiment is by definition underage children. The study can only be done by experimenting, literally, on children and injecting them with enormously destructive drugs that intentionally block their puberty. And I think transgender trend here had a very, very good article about it that I really encourage you to read. They say that essentially what they argue correctly is that what has happened previously was that the gender identity service at the Tavistock Clinic had done all kinds of studies, and they refused to release their own data. So we've also learned that follow-up data on outcomes for children who have been through Tavistock GIDS, which the Adult Transgender Identity Clinic refused to share, was never released to the CAS Review research team. The CAS Review research team did a big study on these puberty blockers and said that there was no evidence that they were beneficial, but the study was done by people who really wanted this kind of thing to continue. It's just that they could find absolutely no evidence for it. And so they had to say that, look, on balance, the evidence is that this is harmful. So there is data there to be looked at because they experimented with around 2,000 children who were prescribed puberty blockers. These children are out there, and if you want to do research on this topic, you would just have to track what has happened to them over the long term. Rather than do that, they decided to launch a new experiment on 200 children to study the long-term effects of these puberty blockers, but by long-term, they mean 2 years. So no actual science is going to come out of this. No actual beneficial research is going to come out of this. The article continues and says, our view on puberty blockers trial is very simple. Although we accept the trials of drugs on children with life-threatening conditions may be worth the risk of serious side effects, in the case of puberty blockers, the treatment is the harm. It is not a negative side effect or a risk. The treatment itself causes the damage. The purpose of the blocker is to introduce ill health to a previously healthy body. Because arrested growth is the desired outcome, it is seen as a successful treatment by gender ideologues. Every positive result of blocking puberty, cessation of menses in girls, breast growth in boys, etc., is a physical indication of a health concern. Every physical change that is viewed by the trans lobby as a positive, effective, and desired result is a medical harm. And this is exactly right. This is precisely the truth of the matter. There is no way that this can be beneficial to children. And we've known this for some time, and we've run this experiment for some time. But even as this experiment was run, there was a study that was funded by Ferring Pharmaceuticals. This is an excellent post here from Connor Tomlinson, by the way. I encourage you to see it. There was a study funding by Ferring Pharmaceuticals that produces a puberty blocker, so you can see immediately the conflict of interest there, that followed 70 children that were prescribed first puberty blockers and then cross-sex hormones. That is intended to sort of change the appearance of children so that they appear to be of the opposite sex. They didn't wait for the results of the study. They just kept on prescribing cross-sex hormones after blocking puberty. And so all of them went on to take cross-sex hormones. which is sort of what you're supposed to be studying, so you've put the conclusion before the study, they lost 20% of the sample size. They lost track of 15 out of the 70. So that's a huge number that makes the study completely invalid. And one of the children died because of the medical procedures that he was undergoing while they were trying to place a vagina on the body of a boy. This means that if they study 200 children, you're looking at 3 children dying on average. This is a huge harm. This is deeply destructive. And we know that this is destructive without the need for any further research. There is no objective reason to study this any further.
It's definitionally destructive.
It's definitionally destructive, and it's proven destructive. So there's no debate here. What we must do instead is to try to analyze the causes of this and to understand what is animating these people. This is Wes Streeting, the health secretary who's authorized this, as I mentioned earlier. And he says that the ban of puberty blockers was necessary because of the evidence and that he was highly constrained. He could do nothing about it to sort of keep this experiment going, even though he wanted to, and the ban made him deeply uncomfortable. So the question that arises really is, why is he uncomfortable with this? Why is he uncomfortable with the idea that there is a natural order that says that boys are boys and girls are girls and they have different roles? Because fundamentally, let's go through a couple of others here before we get there, because I want to explore a little bit of the tension in the ideology. This is Harry Eccles. He's a entertainer on X who says that he's a nurse. His account says that he's based in Indonesia. Okay, fine. But this is the tension at the heart of this ideology. He claims that being gay isn't a choice, even though the largest genetic study on homosexual individuals found that it is not defined by genetics, that there is no genetic reason why somebody would be gay. It's not actually predetermined, but he insists that it is. And then he extends that and says that being trans isn't a choice, being disabled isn't a choice. Well, if you mutilate your own body and end up disabled as a result, there's a question mark there. The color of your skin isn't a choice. Finally, we agree. Be good, love your neighbor, blah, blah, blah. He completely misunderstands the meaning of love your neighbor. That's a different story.
I like the way that all he can do now is invoke Christian morality, though.
Yes. Yes.
To describe himself.
Fundamentally misunderstood.
Well, yeah.
Fundamentally misunderstood. And this is Dr. Helen Weberly. More like... Anyway. She is a strong advocate for this. And I want you to listen to her for a couple of seconds, and then we can pick her message apart a little bit. If we could maybe shrink this to... Let's see. Yeah.
To boil the whole of humanity down to gametes is so mathematical, so binary, so basic. Transgender people...
So hold on. To boil it down to biology, essentially, gametes, or other physical manifestations of your sex, is very mathematical. What she's invoking here is that there is a spiritual dimension, that there is an inherent self that needs to be expressed. So in a real sense, she's conflating the soul with sexual identity. This is a corrupted idea of the human soul. Instead of it being eternal, created by God, touched by the Holy Spirit, a part of the Holy Spirit within all of us, really, it's a question of sexuality. So there is that spiritual dimension there. But then when you listen to her further, it becomes also clear that she believes it's a choice. It's an identity. Anybody can choose this identity. So there is this tension in the transgender ideology between this being innate and this being a choice. On the innate side, as I said, this is a very corrupted expression of what a soul is. This is a sexualized expression of what a soul is. But on the choice side, it really matters. Because what these people are saying is that you should be free enough from all constraints and all of nature and all of hierarchy, so that if there is a baby that you don't want, you can kill it. And if there is a relationship that is unnatural, you should be free to pursue it anyway, because you want to. And if there is a different sex that you want to pretend to be, you should also be allowed to do that. So in a very real sense, and I know Brother Stelios is going to disagree with me here, this is the spirit of liberalism, that we should bring down some hierarchies, that everything is a matter of consent and choice, taken to an extreme. The debate, I think, is whether or not a natural conclusion or an extreme. But let's say extreme for now. And that people should be completely free of anything that constrains them. And that if you try to tie them down to reality and say to them, no, you can't actually be a man if you're born with a vagina, then you're basically attacking them. And you even see that expressed in the kinds of court judgments that we've seen coming out in Britain in the past. So Kira Bell, who sued the Tavistock Clinic in 2020 because she was given puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones as a teenager, said that she's going to fight this. But in her case, the High Court had ruled that under 16s were unlikely to be able to give informed consent. And then the Court of Appeal ruled that no, doctors can judge whether or not young people can give consent. And consent here is the operative word, because neither court looked at truth or reality or what is verifiable. Both the High Court and the Court of Appeal based their decision on whether or not this was consent freely given, and therefore whether or not it was right for the children to pursue this path if they wanted to. Which really sort of, again, it's the very spirit of liberalism taken to an extreme, the idea being that you shouldn't be constrained by what is above, be it divine authority or political authority or social hierarchy.
So I'm going to disagree with you on
Everything
this
should
bit.
depend on consent.
It's not about the spirit from above. That's not how they think. They're actually thinking of material universe. You'll notice that everything for them is about determinism.
Yes.
Excuse me. They're
Bless you.
Sorry, I'm still ill. The very nature of this is to suggest that actually the human body is somehow a fundamentally oppressive instrument.
Yes.
Because deterministically you are born with one of two gametes and you will become a man or a woman. Mm-hmm. This was chosen in advance for you. And that was precisely her point. She was saying this is fundamentally a form of oppression. I do agree, though, that it is the spirit of liberalism taken to a ridiculous extreme where it's obviously inappropriate.
Mm-hmm. I want to give a different explanation because I think it accounts for some of the things that aren't particularly discussed in this but are hidden in plain sight. Is that the explanation is power politics. It's the following: the people you mentioned, Harry Eccles, all these leftists, West Streeting, they're not saying that they're not against banning. They're very much in favor of banning. They want to ban free speech and brand the hate speech if you're criticizing their agenda. So they're not having any kind of anarchist or extreme libertarian zero banning account.
Yes.
They are allying right now with the trans lobby and with other people who think that they have the back of the trans lobby and they want to be seen as having the back of the trans lobby. So to me, this is power politics. West Streeting, Harry Eccles, that lady you showed, it's power politics. They're trying to protect their political friends, and all this is just a giant pyramid of BS that they are using in order to hide the fact that they're doing power politics.
But
let me
I
agree
don't
with
see
you in
I don't
part.
see this. But let me give you an I'll surprise you here. I don't think that this is any kind of there is any kind of particular thinking in it. But what I will give you is that frequently the language of rights can be abused in the same way that the language of common good can be abused, which is one of the arguments that lots of libertarians are giving. They're saying the common good, we shouldn't talk about the common good because it can go totalitarian, only rights. But the rights also can be abused. And I think what you're showing here is definitely a case of that.
So let me tell you where I agree with you. The first point is that pretty much every major organization, from NATO to the British government, to most European governments, to the WHO, to the UN, all believe in affirming transgender identity, the WEF, etc. They all believe in that. And there is a power-related reason for it. If I can make somebody say that a man is a woman, I can pretty much make them say anything. And there is also the usefulness of this madness as a loyalty test. If you're a middle manager and you want to signal to the company that you will do exactly whatever they want, all you have to say is that no, trans women are real women. And why? Because HR told me 5 minutes ago, and now all of reality has changed.
Losing my job over. Yeah.
Exactly. So there is this power dynamic element to it, absolutely. And there is this element of the language of rights gone mad. You know, the right to deny reality, the right to deny biology. But there is the question of where is this impulse coming from?
Can I just make a point there, Firas,
Please.
as well? Because I think a lot of this conversation is being framed as one ideology or another. The reality is what we're really talking about is a different framework, because liberalism or any other ideology operates behind a framework. That framework in, let's call it the Western Hemisphere, for a long, long time has either been a Christian paradigm or a neolibertarian kind of Darwinistic approach to life. Both are the two kind of fundamental approaches to life in this country, at least. Right, and now we're looking at a third framework that doesn't fit either of those two narratives. So baseline talking about libertarianism or anything else doesn't really work here, because you're not actually fundamentally operating in the same framework anymore. And so what we've really got to be talking about is what is the deeper framework that they're trying to impose, as opposed to a particular ideological kind of position. And that's when you start talking about, well, what is their ultimate end, right? And it's not necessarily any of the things we're discussing. It's not communism in a pure form, although I'd say it's closer to communism than anything else. And it's not really libertarianism. It's a completely new way of looking at the world. And that is what we've got to get to the core of. And for me, this is a transhumanistic agenda. This is where we take ourselves out of ideology and actually replace us with something new.
So the only thing I disagree with there is that we're taking ourselves out of ideology. I think, I mean, you call it
existing ideology.
Oh, right.
So it's a new, that's my point, is it's a wider framework that we're looking at. Yeah.
Basically, the objective is liberation from
the
biology,
the material realm itself.
And the material realm.
Apart from those who control it. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. No, I think that's fair.
So on your point, Stelios, I agree that is a layer of it, that is a level of it. But if we can go back to Wes Streeting very quickly, I think that the reason that it unsettles him is because he has a moral argument that underpins it, right? And he's actually, and I think they're all like this. Like, I don't think there's a difference between Wes Streeting and the trans lobby. He is the trans lobby. He is a part of it, because all it takes to become part of it is to have a moral commitment to it. And so he's as much a part of it as anyone else on that side, as the doctor that you showed as well. So I don't think there's a difference there. And I think they are genuinely morally motivated in the ways that they are telling us. I don't think that they're concealing any, alternative or hidden motivations or beliefs. I think they're being completely frank with us, that they feel that these people are trapped in the wrong bodies with all of the insane metaphysical commitments that they can't possibly articulate that come along with that, as in, where was the person before they were in the body then? Explain this, I think they truly believe this, and I think this to them is a truly moral mission, in the same way that abolishing the slave trade was back in the 1900s or the 1800s, 19th century. This is a genuine crusade for them, and I think you are correct that this is the spirit of liberalism that is taking us into this new framework, this new paradigm, into a place where we've not been before, because it was never appropriate to apply this spirit in this realm. So I think this is something they will never stop. And I think that's what explains, if we can go through Wes's little tirade here, because I think this explains it. Can we go up to the top? I'll read it from the whole thing. So he says, children with gender incongruence deserve safe, compassionate, effective care, that healthcare must always be led by evidence. So again, he's already talked past the sale here, right? Because the question is not, is there evidence that we can change a child's sex?
Exactly.
Because, I mean, let's assume that technology will allow us to literally, at the molecular level, at some point in future, just put a kid in like a Star Trek style transporter, teleport them to this other thing, and just rearrange all their genes as we like. Okay, even if we've got the technology to do it, should we do that?
Yes.
And the answer has been decided for Wes. Yes, of course we should. We just need to know that the technology is sufficient. Right? So he says, the CAS review is clear. There isn't enough evidence that puberty blockers are safe or beneficial for children with gender incongruence. Well, we assume that children can have gender incongruence, but obviously the medicine itself is not safe or beneficial for them because it is interceding in a perfectly healthy natural process to create an unhealthy, unnatural result. And so Dr. Cass recommended a ban on prescribing them and a clinical trial to build that evidence. So Dr. Cass has said, right, what I want to do, as you pointed out before we started, she wants to do this, but can't bring herself to say it because the scientific evidence isn't there. So I am forced to say, for utilitarian reasons, not moral reasons, that we have to stop prescribing them. But then I want to start experimenting on children, more children, in order to try and build a case for my presupposed ideological position, which is mad.
I mean, it sort of brings Mengele to mind, doesn't it?
I was going to say that, but I didn't want to go that far because it sounds a bit gauche, right?
I do. I mean, look, if you're going to experiment on people for the sake of a characteristic, which obviously the Nazis were genuinely looking for reasons to make Jewish people subhuman, right? We're basically now looking for reasons to make children something different. There's very different. There's no difference at all. In fact, it's worse because I don't think Mengele started out experimenting on children.
He did do it on pregnant women.
He did eventually, but it took him a while. These guys are going straight in at the deep end.
But it is genuinely monstrous what they're proposing. And Wes Streeting, was he the health secretary?
Yes.
And he's in government, and he's just publicly saying that we're about to start experimenting on children because we have a series of insane beliefs about the world, and we're going to use your money to pay for it.
That story that Connor said about the guy dying on the table, having his genitals removed. I mean, this is the stuff of Stephen King. This is not the stuff.
This is nightmarish.
It's not government
Nightmarish
style stuff.
The question about, they think the doctors can tell whether the children can give informed consent. Well, you don't have the information. That's the purpose of the study, is to gather this information. So you can't possibly, nobody can give informed consent for this because the knowledge simply isn't present. And even if the knowledge was present, this is a deeply immoral thing to do anyway. So the fact that you might be able to do it. And so when he follows on and says, we extended the ban on prescribing them, we're now setting up clinical trials to build the evidence base we need to support vulnerable children properly. It's like, well, it seems like you're taking advantage of vulnerable children. And why are their parents consenting to this at all?
They're put in an impossible bind. They're constantly told that if they don't agree, their children will commit suicide. And that they would be absolutely horrendous people. And then the nature of the study means that only parents who are willing to consider this as a possibility will allow their children to participate. And there are no safeguards on whether or not these children have had any other psychological conditions that would help them study it. So it's very much, as you say, they're assuming already that the better outcome would be liberation from reality. That the desired outcome would be for material reality not to constrain individuals in this way, and for people to be able to choose which gender they want to be. So this is already part of their thinking. And there is
Can I just point out based Rupert Lowe there? What the bomb ratioing him to hell. What the NHS is doing to young kids is sick.
Yeah, exactly.
It's true.
Exactly. And there's no braking mechanism on this. Now they want to try to plant uteruses in men to see if they can get men pregnant. So there's no way of stopping this ideology except by going back to the basics.
But can I point out that, IVF, much as we can contend the morality of it, is what has led to this, because you begin experimenting outside of the womb in a lot of cases.
Yes.
And then you are basically just using toys to play around with by the end of it. And to go back to your point on parents, this is the same generation that forces their kids to sit in front of a TV rather than taking care of them. So again, we're just in this disassociative mindset. The whole thing is disassociative.
Yes.
What is this
completely.
Operation Seahorse?
Say again?
This Operation Seahorse, like they try to make men...
That's put the womb into a man.
Yeah.
That's...
So they have this thing about sea creatures. I noticed mermaids is the children's charity.
Yeah.
And then I've got seahorses.
That is weird. Well, the seahorses make sense
be a
because
thing.
male seahorses actually do
Yeah.
Makes a lot more sense.
babies.
Mermaids,
The mermaids
just have their legs cut off, so it's a bit different, isn't
It's
it?
a bit weird, isn't it? Anyway.
So it is weird, it is disgusting, and there's no braking mechanism on this, except by going back to the basics about hierarchy being good and natural, about the roles of men and women being fundamentally different, about the sinfulness of all sexual relations outside of marriage, about the purpose of sex, and to have a lot less tolerance for deviant sexual behavior of all kinds that we've now learned to tolerate.
Okay, there is also a
Hold
non-Catholic
on.
interpretation.
Hold on. We can't have a situation where we say men can get married and that the roles of women and the roles of men in society are the same without this being turned on its head and us being told, well, if the roles are the same, then somebody who chooses to play the role of a woman is in fact a woman, which is what we're being told here.
How are we going
So
from this
intolerance is the way out of this.
Yes, but so there is a non-Catholic interpretation.
Okay.
That is slightly more moderate, which
Okay.
is that the material realm is deterministic in some ways.
Yes.
For example, it is determined from your point of birth that you will become a man or a woman,
Yes.
and that in fact unchosen impositions that the universe puts upon you are actually not themselves bad or oppressive or wrong.
Correct.
And these are the normal things you need to live within. We don't have to necessarily adopt the metaphysical positions of a staunch Catholic on that. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't or anything like that.
I would argue that these positions
I know.
come
No, you
from observing material reality.
But the point...
Locke concedes the point that
Sure,
the differences
without
between-
getting into that argument for the sake
Okay.
of time, if nothing else,
yeah.
from a much more moderate perspective, I think that the average person can see the reality in front of their faces, which is actually there is a lot in life that is unchosen, but that still is good and valuable. And this insane extremist experiment to try and overthrow the nature of reality's dominion over us is not only doomed to fail, but it's going to create thousands of victims, many of whom will die, and their lives will be unrecoverable afterwards, even if they don't.
If you say that it is an imposed reality that is good, that a child born male will grow up to be a man, you can then say, be a man and behave like a man.
Yes.
And that has certain implications,
Yes.
including about sexual behavior.
Yes.
Okay, so we're in agreement here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But the point is, the extremist liberals here would see this as deterministic and non-consensual and say, well, this deeply troubles me
Yes.
that this is the case. And so it's worth pointing out that most people are not in this camp and are sane. Even if they're not particularly religious, they still have a commonsensical view of the world. But so the point is the government is mental. And
Yes.
it's run by mental people
We can agree on that.
who hold
We can agree on
absolutely
that.
extreme views that people just don't agree with.
If you would like to watch the full uncut version that is also uncensored, head on over to lotuseaters.com to find out more.